Hey guys, Keegan Russell here with the Sports Authority Gurus podcast. If you haven't done so yet, please give us a like and a follow on Twitter at @TheSportsAGurus and on Facebook at The Sports Authority Gurus for all the details about the upcoming episodes and where you can listen to us from. In today's episode, Spencer and I will be recapping the 2022 NBA Finals and break down how the Warriors ended up as the champs. And then we will turn our attention towards the upcoming NBA draft, which starts this Thursday night, June 23rd at 7 p.m. Central Time. Now with that, thank you for listening today. Let's dive right in. All right, guys, Keegan Russell here and Spencer Gray, the hosts of the Sports Authority Gurus podcast. Today's episode we are super excited for. We're going to talk some NBA Finals coverage. We're going to talk the NBA draft. This is, for Spencer and I, one of our favorite times of the year to break down NBA offseason now that the season's officially over. So that's what we're going to get into today. But before that, I want to give a quick shout out to everyone that's been following along with us the last couple weeks. Our first two videos posted to YouTube, which of course right now are just audio, but our first intro episode's gotten over 20 views, and our KU basketball lineup video's gotten over 80 now, which that's super excited for that. Now that's more than we anticipated being our first couple episodes. So thank you guys for sticking with us, and we're excited to have you again with us today. So Spencer, the finals are over, and the Golden State Warriors are your 2022 NBA World Champions. Give me your breakdown on the series. What did you think about? I mean, obviously we talked about it before. I think both of us had the Celtics potentially winning this.
Yeah.
But wouldn't be surprised if the Warriors pulled it off. But kind of give me your rundown of how the finals ended the way it did and how it went from, Boston game 1 to Warriors pulling it out in 6, making it look easy.
Yeah, no, especially after game 1 when the Warriors blew that lead at home, I thought I switched my pick. I was going to take Celtics in 5 actually, because I figured the Warriors would, take at least one at home. And then I thought it was just going to be a clean sweep, but I was very surprised. I thought for sure the Celtics were going to win because they were dominant on both sides. Tatum, I thought, was going to figure it out. Brown was, he was pretty consistent, apart from a couple rough slides here and there. But I think what ended up happening is, number one, Andrew Wiggins became, the second option. I think they finally figured it out between Wiggins, Thompson, and Poole, they kind of switch between who's the second, third, and fourth options. And I think they finally were like, all right, Wiggins is going to be the second option. He's going to guard the best player on the other team. And, Poole took his role as, backup point guard. And Clay, I think his shot selection got a little bit better as the series went along. So I think everyone just kind of figured out their roles, and then Steph played fantastic. So big props to the Warriors. I did not pick them to win for a reason. I thought Draymond and Thompson were aging a little bit, and I didn't think Steph could honestly, carry a team and beat a team as good as the Celtics. But there's a lot that went wrong on the Celtics side too. I don't know what was up with Tatum. I don't know. I mean, Horford played like, Kareem in the first game, and then turned into, Al Horford in the next couple games. So, I don't know. I was pretty surprised with the outlook. I was pretty confident in the Celtics pick.
Yeah, I was right there with you after game 1. I thought the Celtics, I wouldn't say truly dominated game 1, but I thought they came out and played very physical. And their coaching scheme for their game plan just was immaculate. They came out and put pressure on the ball, made Steph really work to get his shots off. Definitely helped that Clay was struggling early on, and the rest of their team. It just looked like the Celtics were coming out saying, "Hey, we're the best defensive team and we're the best coach team, and we're gonna dictate this series." And as quickly as they took control of game 1, it just kind of went downhill from there. Obviously we're going to talk about how Wiggins was dominant on the defensive end. But I thought this series really came down to coaching, and obviously you give the edge to Steve Kerr. He's been doing this for years now, and he's got several titles. I was very impressed with the Celtics run through the playoffs with a first-year head coach in Ime Udoka. as well coached as they were, the way they play defense, I thought that was going to actually help them. And I think in the long run, the Warriors coaching really came alive, and Steve Kerr made fantastic adjustments throughout the series, really focused in on how to slow down Tatum and Brown, which no one's really done in the playoffs that well. And he found a way to do that. And I think on the flip side, when the Celtics were struggling offensively, they didn't make enough adjustments coaching wise to adjust their game plan accordingly and go to a different method. So I was really impressed with the coaching overall. I thought this was definitely much better series than what we've seen. But yeah, the Warriors, they were impressive. Steph found a way to get it done night in and night out. Clay started to warm up. Obviously Draymond, I think overall had a pretty bad series still. He's kind of declining offensively. He still makes his presence known. I think he gets so caught up in the emotional side of the game that distracts from what he needs to do. But yeah, very impressive win by the Celtics, or I'm sorry, by the Warriors. This is their 4th championship in 8 years, and then the 4th of this current regime with Steph, Clay, Draymond, and Steve Kerr. What do you think that does for the dynasty talk? I think there's still people out there that are hesitant to throw the term out there with this group. I think it's ridiculous to not think of them as a dynasty. 4 and 8 years is a dynasty. That's practically what the Spurs did. That's more of a dynasty than what LeBron had with the Heat, and with the Cavs too. So I consider them a dynasty. Do you consider them the same? And if so, where does that rank them in NBA history with other dynasties?
Yeah,
At least ones that we're familiar with.
for sure. I agree. I can't understand the argument against them being a dynasty. I mean, 4 titles in 8 years. I mean, you can say what you want about Durant joining, but say what you want. I mean, that entire regime. I mean, they've beaten so many different teams, so many different caliber players. I mean, they've beaten LeBron. They've beaten this really great Celtics team. I was trying to go through. I just realized that they faced LeBron pretty much 90% of the time in the finals. But even getting there in a really tough Western Conference too is very impressive. And the 2 biggest things it does is, number one, I mean, it helps Kerr and Steph the most, because a lot of people doubted Kerr's coaching ability, kind of gave him the Phil Jackson treatment. It's like anyone could win with
when you got the most talent.
But at the same time, like you said, he coached a really good series and he made really good adjustments. And he's always, to me, he's been one of the better coaches in the NBA in terms of adjusting his game plan mid game. I think not a lot of guys do that better than him. And just what he's been able to accomplish in such a short amount of time, I think that probably cements some top 15, and I think NBA came out with their top 15 of all time and Kerr was in it and everyone was throwing a fit. And I'm like, I mean, you can say what you want, but you can't really argue about what, he's been able to do. And then for Steph, I mean, gosh, he's been the best player on a dynasty team that's, lasted 8 years, 4 titles, best shooter of all time. I mean, that really does wonders for him. He's not better than LeBron, so I don't really want to hear that argument. I already have started to hear that argument.
Sure.
But he's definitely, gosh, it did wonders for him. I think that catapulted him into top 10 pretty easily, in my opinion. I'm having a tough time figuring out why not. But
I'm kind of with you there.
And there shouldn't be any debate there. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think, like you said, for Steve Kerr, for sure, I think that supplants him as a top 15 coach all time. I'm one, I don't like to get caught up in you have to have championship rings to prove your argument of best all time.
Right.
I'm one, as much as championships are important, I completely agree with that. You got to have longevity and sustainability. Mm-hmm. So the fact that the Warriors not only have done 4 and 8 years, Steph's continued to get better throughout his career. And so he's not just, he's not going through seasons where he's scoring 30 points a game and then he's dropping down to 18. He's keeping that consistent level of play very high. Right. And same with Steve Kerr. His coaching ability has been incredibly high. This was not one of their most talented teams as far as championship teams. And they had a lot of things to overcome the last couple of years. And he's done an excellent job of using the pieces he has to continue to be successful. And kudos also to their development team. They find the right guys to play the right roles and they coach him up to play those roles very well. So I think it definitely supplants Steve Kerr's coaching legacy as a top 15, if not top 10 coach. And of course, he's still got many years ahead of him. I think barely even broken into his coaching career. Steph, definitely top 10 conversations. It's so hard to do top 10s. I think top 10s are, it depends on who you ask, because if you ask guys that watch a lot of the league now, it's going to be heavily in favor of the guys playing now. Well, if you ask people that have been watching the NBA for the last 40 years, you're not going to break them off of, nope, the guys that are in the top 10 already, you can't replace them. Right. How are you going to take Olajuwon out to put Steph in? How, we can get in that conversation. But I think for Steph, for sure, he's top 15 of all time. Yeah. And he's going to continue to do it. He doesn't show any signs of slowing down. I think he wore down a little bit throughout the series. But when he did, I think it's because the rest of his teammates, Clay would have a struggle during the game, or Jordan Poole wouldn't be shooting well. So Steph's he was playing a lot of minutes. I think there for a while, he was averaging over 42 minutes a game, of course, 48 in a game. So he's playing a ton, not getting much rest. But yeah, Steph, he's the greatest shooter of all time. Definitely, you can argue best point guard of all time. We're not going to get in that debate because there's so many different definitions of what a point guard is. Yeah. His play style is obviously completely different from someone like Magic. But we're in a day and age where this is what the point guard position looks like in the NBA. It's got to be a scoring first guard that can also distribute and do other things well too. Right. So great for Steph's case there for legacy. I don't think he needed the MVP award to really help him. Yeah. I don't think that hurts him either. But 4 in 8 years is still incredible, and he's doing it at an incredibly efficient rate, and it still looks like he's improving. I do want to talk Andrew Wiggins, because I think when we previewed this series, and we didn't do this in our episodes, but we previewed it, you and I talking, and the two guys we thought that needed to have big series were Andrew Wiggins for the Warriors and Al Horford for the Celtics. Both had big series. Wiggins happened to have the bigger impact because he just completely shut down Tatum and Brown when he was guarding them. I didn't pull up all the stats in front of me for this because it was a little too detailed. But I think it was somewhere between less than 30, like between Tatum and Brown, when guarded by Wiggins, they shot less than 35% from the floor. Even though Tatum had several games, he was scoring in the 20s, he was doing it on like 9 of 23 shooting or 8 of 25 shooting, not very impressive shooting numbers getting to the line. So let's break down the series for Wiggins. He averaged over 18 points a game. I think if anything, the stat that stands out the most is he was averaging close to 9 rebounds per game too. So he was aggressive. He was all over the court, averaged 1.5 steals and 1.5 blocks per game. So clearly the defense stood out. What did you see about his performance in this series, and why was his level of play so important for the Warriors pulling this out?
Well, I think it was important for him because everybody was clowning him for being an all-star starter this year, which, do I think he should have been starting? No, but it was not ridiculous for him to be an all-star this year. I mean, close to 20 points per game on really, really good defense too, with decent shooting splits. I mean, that's all-star numbers too, but he just had a fantastic, series, and he did every single thing he possibly could that, you could ask out of your, slashing forward. I mean, he was getting rebounds. He was defending like crazy. He was hitting really tough shots. I mean, he was, he's doing, he loves the mid post area, loves his little half spin turnarounds. And I just think he was super impressive. As good as he was, Steph deserved the finals MVP, but you could definitely, make a case that Andrew Wiggins could have been. And he was definitely more than just an X factor. He was by far their second best player on a championship winning team. So that should eliminate any bust talk from people, which shouldn't have existed even in the first place. But to be able to shut down, I mean, not just Tatum, but Brown too. I mean, that's probably the best, forward combo in the entire league. And he shut him down. I mean, completely. And you're right. I mean, they were having some 20-point games, but I mean, 20 points on 21 shots is not really that.
Yeah. It's not a very efficient game.
It's not impressive, but also, I mean, that's a pretty bad stat line because I've never, volume shooting like that is just not very effective. And to winning. And so the fact that he was able to take out like two of their best players was very, very impressive. And obviously there's a lot of defensive scheming going on with Kurt guarding him. It's not like Wiggins was on them, every single possession, but he definitely had the biggest impact. So I'm really happy for Wiggs because, like I said, it should eliminate that nonsense bust talk, even though he's been a close to, over 20-point scorer for most of his career. I just, he's just on a bad team before. So, but yeah, super happy for him.
Yeah, we're finally getting to see the potential everyone's talked about. Coming out of college from Kansas, very impressive freshman year, super, super athletic. That was never in question. He was a good defender at KU, but he got drafted and everyone was just so hyped up on his ability to score that I think that got to his head too. And he was called on to be a scorer. Minnesota didn't really take the time to develop him as a defender. And I don't think Wiggins even took the time to make that a priority to develop his game. But transitioning to the Warriors now, they've made it a priority, telling him, hey, you're not the number one. You're not even the number two. You're probably number three, sometimes number four guy. That being said, if you're going to be in our rotation and play successfully and win championships, you got to play defense. So we're finally seeing him unlock that potential. I mean, he just irritated the crap out of Tatum. Every possession, I'm watching this, and we're going to talk about the turnovers, but Tatum was just, just looked so uncomfortable. He was getting beat up. Wiggins was a clamp on him right there, and he was forcing him to take all these ill-advised off-balance shots. There were not that many games I thought Tatum had solid, clear looks at the basket. Even when he was trying to drive and back down guys, Wiggins is right there irritating him and then transition off to Draymond. So they just really frustrated Tatum. I think Brown had a better series overall between the two, and mostly that's because Tatum was the number one priority. And I think that he's one of the main reasons why I think the Celtics ended up losing the series, because he just was not prepared to adjust his game with the way Wiggins was playing. So just an incredible series by Wiggins that sets him up. He's going to be a restricted free agent, probably still do a decent amount of money, maybe not as much as he's making right now, but still possibly a big payday coming his way. If you're the Warriors, do you keep him? Do you look at moving him now that this is his probably peak trade value? What do you do there? Because obviously their luxury tax bill is really high. They have no indication of wanting to move on from any of their current trio. So is Wiggins a part of that future, or is it looking at him or Jordan Poole? What's your thoughts there?
Well, somebody's going to have to take a pay cut between him and Poole, because Poole, I think, has played very, very well, but he's still pretty young. And I think he needs to develop a lot on defense, and his shot selection and ball security need to improve slightly. So he's not, it's not like he's going to get the max or anything. But teams are probably going to be interested in Poole. Teams are also going to be interested in Wiggins. I think you probably should keep Wiggins at this point, unless you can replace what you're losing with, I don't know, they could go out and get a scorer and a defender in return. But I just think he offers too much on both sides of the ball. And to me, I mean, this team just plays really, really well together. So I don't really see a reason to get it going. Now, the only thing that I could see being somewhat of a question mark is Wiseman coming back. How's that going to affect their spacing? How's that going to affect the rotations? Is it as simple as taking Looney out and putting Wiseman in, or do you have him come off the bench? So that's going to tweak with the rotations a little bit, but I really don't think that affects Wiggins' role whatsoever. So I would go ahead and keep him. Pay him what you got to pay him. I mean, at this point, Draymond and Thompson, when it comes time for them to, look at their contracts again, I think at that point it could be a situation, like Dirk took a pay cut when he was getting a little bit older, just so they can keep a young core together. So I think to keep some of those younger players like Wiggins and Poole, they may not be Thompson and Dre and even Steph may not be as expensive as they used to be. So I would definitely, and Bob Myers is very, very good at constructing the team. So I think we'll keep him.
Yeah, I'm with you there too. I think, and this is going to transition us into my next question for you. I think keeping him or moving on from him depends on what the Warriors' goals are. If they want to keep this championship window open and continue the impressive run they're on, and they want to continue to compete for a championship, which why wouldn't you? to me, that means Wiggins is on that roster next year and they find a way to reconstruct that. You might have a lot of questions come up on who you can keep and who you can't. Obviously, not everyone can stick around. The Warriors are not going to be a team that's worried about signing 1-year vet guys that want to come out to compete for a championship. Half their roster is that this year already. I just question, when is it time to start looking towards the future? And if you want to start looking towards the future, moving on from Wiggins would be one way to do that, because that clears up a lot of cap space. When I look at their current roster, if they were to do that, Jonathan Kuminga would be that guy that obviously slides right in. Similar athlete to Wiggins, not the same dynamic scorer that Wiggins can be, but they're both physically gifted, long, athletic, big reach, play aggressive on offense and can play solid defense. So that could be an option there. He's probably not quite ready to jump into that number 2 or number 3 scoring role, but with the balance that their offense has, that could very well be a replacement there. Because I kind of have the feeling they want to keep Jordan Poole around, and I think he's going to be pricey in the offseason. And I don't know if they can keep both without making some other moves. So I think for Wiggins, this is his best spot right now. I think he could move to another team, but the Warriors are getting the most out of him, and he's still so young. I know he's like 8 years into his career, but he's only like 26 right now, 27, something like that. So he's still got plenty of years ahead of him to continue increasing his production. So I'm in favor of keeping Wiggins around unless it's time to move on. So that being said, how much longer do you think the Warriors can keep this trio going? And is this the offseason, now that they've won another championship, is this the offseason that they start looking into breaking the trio up and moving forward in a different direction?
I don't think so. I think the only thing that could potentially, kind of shrink their window, because they're going to come back hopefully with close to the same roster next year, is if Clay and Draymond slow down a little bit, because, we saw Draymond didn't play great in the series. Thompson hasn't. I mean, he's had good games and flashes here and there, but he's definitely lost a little bit of a step after missing 2 years. But, aside from that, they have a really good opportunity because they have young guys that can literally replace their, existing trio, because Poole's going to be a guy, if he keeps developing, he could easily slide in and be, have a Steph type of role. I'm not saying he's going to be as good as Steph, but he plays very similarly. He's super, super young, and the amount of improvement he's already shown in 3 years. He went from arguably one of the worst players in the entire NBA his first season in terms of his efficiency and shooting splits to a really, really good player who demands probably going to get, a decent contract. And then, you have Wiseman, who we don't know how good he's going to be, but he
hasn't even been on the court much yet.
Exactly. He's a 7-footer. He can spread the floor. He's a good defender, good rim protector. And then, you have Wiggins, you have Kuminga that can just slide in and be that difference maker on. So I think they have a really unique opportunity. I think their rebuild times can be super, super quick, because I think they have pieces that they're already coaching to replace the guys that they have. But their window, they could easily go back to the finals this upcoming year. I mean, because the Western Conference, we really thought Phoenix was going to be that, that team to go this year, and that ended up not happening. The only other one, because I don't know what the Lakers are going to do. I don't know what the Clippers are going to do.
Clippers could come back hot. I think they're a team to keep your eye on.
If Kawhi comes back and he's the same, then absolutely. And then the only other one, the Mavs got really, really good with Christian Wood. I think.
Yeah, I like that trade a lot.
Conference finals this year with the team that their second best player was Spencer Dinwiddie. That's pretty impressive. Not that Dinwiddie's a bad player, but that was still pretty impressive because there wasn't even a lot of depth and they had injuries. And anyway, that's. I think their window, they could win now at least 2 or 3 more years. I think they could be a finals contending team. They just have to, as long as their stars hold up, because the way Steph plays, he could easily play till, 35, 36, 37, yeah. Still be a difference maker, because it's not like he's, jumping over anybody. It's not like he's, plays like, prime D Rose and throwing himself at the rim every single time.
He plays very smart. He knows how to use his body and conditions very well.
He could check up 40-footers when he's 40. So, there's 45-year-old dudes that do that at the rec every single day. So, it's definitely something that they got a window left, I'd say.
Last thing I'll mention with the Warriors before we move on to draft talk, just something to keep your eye on because they haven't done much with Wiseman. There is a possibility that they look to move him, and they right now they have the 28th pick, but there is a scenario where they could package Andrew Wiggins and Wiseman for a very high level draft pick if there's a guy in the draft they feel could come in right away and pick up right where the team left off. So just something to look out for. Don't know if that's really likely. I doubt it's likely. If one of those two got moved, Wiseman's probably the more likely of the two, just because his potential's there. So we're going to transition into draft talk here in a moment, but right now we are going to take a quick break. All right, guys, we are back in it. This is the Sports Authority Gurus podcast. We just finished up talking about the NBA Finals, and now we are transitioning into the draft. Like we said earlier, it is officially the off season, and the draft is just a couple days away. And we're going to kind of do a different breakdown of the draft, different from what you kind of get from everybody else. So I'm gonna give you a rundown of the picks as far as who is drafting, and then we're gonna talk about some of the top players, and then Spencer and I are gonna give you our perspective as what we would do if we were drafting. However, Spencer, do you have the news pulled up that you found during this break, or we're not ready for that yet?
Yeah, no, I did find it. So this is from Matt Babcock. So he apparently Chet Holmgren has not provided his medical report to most teams and did not participate in the NBA's heart screening at the draft combine, which is pretty big. He's got an interesting build, and it could be, subject to certain medical issues that, I mean, just reading that right away, if you have a top 3 pick and there's concerns over, something like that, that could definitely impact his standing.
Then let's just jump right into it. And if we find out more while we are recording this, we will certainly bring it up. So let's look at the draft lineup so far, and then we'll jump straight into probably talking about Chet. Yep. So right now I'm going to go through the lottery picks. We got Orlando with the first pick, followed up by Oklahoma City. This is their first of 2 picks in the lottery. They're at number 2 and number 12. Houston is at number 3, Sacramento 4, Detroit 5, Indiana 6, Portland 7, New Orleans 8, the Spurs at 9, Washington at 10, the Knicks at 11, the Thunder again at 12, Charlotte at 13, followed up by Cleveland at 14, and then just throw them back in there. Charlotte has the 15th pick again. So before we talk Chet, this has been talked about as a 3-player draft with Jabari, Chet, and Paulo at the top. I'm going to call this a 4-player draft because I'm really big on Jaden Ivey. So let's just jump right into this news about Chet. He has been back and forth between the first and second pick. I don't think anyone has him below number 2. The Magic seem to be pretty high on Jabari, but they also like Chet. The Thunder seem to really like Chet, and Chet likes them. With this news of Chet, does that give you any concern as a top 3 draft position to go out and get him? Or is it just something minor that he'll figure out and we shouldn't look too much into it?
Well, there probably just needs to be more developments, and teams just need to investigate it a little bit more. The thing with Chet is that his build is just, it offers 2 different variables. Number one, he's obviously skinnier, and is he going to be able to finish against NBA bigs, or is he going to get pushed around in the paint? Is he going to be able to back down players? Is he even going to be able to back down mismatches with guards? I mean, you get somebody like Kyle Lowry, or a bigger guard on him. How's that going to look like? On the flip side, Kevin Durant's a slender guy. Doesn't really seem to matter very much with him. But it's the thing with Holmgren is his handles have to become very, very good, and his shooting has to be very, very good. Those 2 things, with his type of build and his type of frame, he's probably not going to be able to put on a ton of weight. I don't see him becoming like Giannis and then becoming jacked, over a couple of years. So he's got to maximize those 2 things. So I think he's got a lot of upside, but his risk is a little bit higher compared to someone like Jabari or Banchero. So I don't know. We're just going to have to see him. If I'm an NBA team and I see the report, I would just have to do a little bit more investigating to see what that is, because heart issues could take you out permanently.
They could. Yeah, yep. We've seen that with Isaiah Austin several years ago, having some issues. We saw just recently with LaMarcus Aldridge had to take a year off. Yet with guys like Chet, when you're that big guys, you always have health concerns on how you can keep some longevity out of them. That's always the talk with Joel Embiid. Coming out of KU, had some back injuries, foot injuries. How do you keep a guy that big healthy? Frame is definitely a big concern. He's got to add some weight, some muscle mass. I mean, he's decently ripped, but he's also like buck 90, so he's under 200 pounds. So that's definitely a big
The
concern.
7-footer.
For a 7-footer, and he is pretty solid up and down the court for a 7-footer. A lot of guard skills there, but
Yeah.
definitely lacks the frame to play in the post, and that would be my number one concern. So let's look at this at the draft. Number one pick, the Orlando Magic. Give you a quick rundown of the roster. They're very guard heavy right now, and they're pretty solid in the front court as far as depth. They've got a lot of big guys. Seems whoever they draft at the number one pick, it's going to be a guy entering in a position that they're relatively deep in. My perspective, when I think about having the number one pick, there's two things I'm looking for. One, I'm looking for the guy who is a surefire thing to take control of my franchise for the next 8 to 12 years. Not only who can score the ball, yes, you want the best scorer in the draft for this spot, but you want somebody who can really take your team and carry them for the next 8 to 12 years and be the franchise guy. Second, with that, you also want the best player in the draft when you're drafting number one. And that doesn't always mean it's the one who can score the most points. It's the guy with the highest upside and the best skill level and talent. So, that being said, out of these four guys, Paolo Banchero, Chet Holmgren, Jabari Smith, and Jaden Ivey, who do you feel best suits that comparison for what a number one pick should be? Is it a guy like Jabari who's held that spot for most of the offseason, uber talented 6'10" wing who can play the 4 and the 5, can score from all over, shoot? Is it a guy like Chet Holmgren who does have huge potential and upside? Even though he's got some frame issues, he is probably the one with the most potential in the draft? Or do you look at guys that are a little bit more ready, like Jaden Ivey and Paolo Banchero?
I like to go a healthy medium. I like to go the guys that have a high ceiling, but do have, NBA ready skills now. I've never been a huge fan of drafting the raw talent at number one. I always think that, if you have a top 5 pick and let's say you're at 4, that might be, the way to go. And I also like to throw in a 5th guy. I really like Keegan Murray from Iowa. He can switch between a stretch 4 and a slashing 3. Good handles, good passer, can shoot. So I really like him as well. But I like to go somewhere in the middle. If I was the Magic, I think Jabari Smith, he only weighs about 15 more pounds than Chet Holmgren, so they actually have similar frames. And they're similar players. So I think he is a decently safe pick. But I think the guy that's totally in between that and is the best one is Paulo Banchero, because he does have some, I think there could be some question marks, but I think his potential is just as high, as the other two. And I think he's the most NBA ready right now. The only thing with him is, how quick is he going to be able to go? Can he bring the ball up 95 feet and lead a fast break as a, 4 or 5? But I always like going somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I think this draft is interesting to me. I feel like as I look up and down the list of guys, to me, this is a draft that just really screams role players. I don't feel too strongly about that many guys. There are plenty with huge upside and potential. But I think we've just noticed the last several years with the draft, there's only so few guys in the draft that turn out to be a surefire thing. And when you're drafting this high, you can't swing and miss just because someone's got potential. So I love Jabari Smith. I think he's a fantastic athlete, tremendous scorer, would be huge for the Magic, could come in right away and increase their offensive production. Tremendous shooter at his size, which they've lacked. They do have a logjam at the 3, 4, 5 spot. Typically when that's the case, you just draft the talent, you figure out the rest later. So I'm sure they'd be fine. But I agree with you. I think Paulo is the most NBA ready guy in this draft. He's got great charisma and character. Brings a lot of energy to the floor. Even as a freshman, he showed a lot of great leadership skills on the court, shows that he can lead a team, communicate well. kind of that point forward, can be the ball dominant scoring guy when need be, but he can also post you up, pass in and out of the post. He's probably one of the best pure big man passers in this draft. So he could very much play a Sabonis role or a similar version to what Ben Simmons could be. So he would be my pick. I think he's very easy to fill your roster around because he's very versatile. He'd slide in as your number 4, but could be a small ball 5. Um, Probably a little weak on quickness as far as being able to switch on the more athletic threes, but he'd be my pick. It sounds like it's probably gonna be Jabari. I'm trying to look at this with some objective to it, and I don't know what that objective is yet because I do like the Thunder and they have the number 2 pick. So selfishly, I want Chet or Paulo to go 1 because I think Jabari would fit tremendously well with the Thunder. That is a position they lack, that big, strong body 3-4 guy that can score from all levels. Right now, all of the pressure falls on Shea to develop the offense, and he can do it, but he needs a running mate. I don't think Josh Giddey is going to be that guy from a scoring standpoint, but bringing in Jabari would be huge for them. So I go back and forth with the first overall pick. But to me, the 2 guys that I would be looking the most at as far as your franchise level players are Paulo and Jaden Ivey. I think Jaden Ivey is one who's not getting enough talk as a top 3 pick. He's a guy who's got a very similar frame to a Ja Morant, Russell Westbrook kind of guy. Obviously, much better shooter than Russell is. Not quite as powerful as Ja Morant is, but he's a little bit better off the bounce and can create his own shot pretty well. So those are the 2 that I really like. I think when you look at the landscape of the NBA, the position you need to be the most effective, in my opinion, is your scoring guard. They need to be someone that can score 25 to 30 points a game if you need them to, can distribute, can pick up full court, and just can create the energy you need. And I think Jaden Ivey's that guy. So he's another one I would throw up in there. But it sounds like it's probably going to be Chet or Jabari Smith at 1. So for this, based on all the mock drafts, right now Jabari's going number 1. So let's look at the Thunder's pick at number 2. I already said I would love that to be Jabari. It's probably going to be Chet Holmgren. What would you do with the Thunder's pick?
Well, I think obviously it's going to depend on who goes number 1. The funny thing is they may not draft at all. I think they would be a strong candidate for packaging the 2 and 12 for someone like a Bradley Beal or something like that, because I think at this point the Thunder drafts, it seems like 50 times a year. And so I think at this point, Presti's going to start, actually flipping some of these for moves because they can only tank for so long. They can only have so many 15-win seasons.
Yeah, because if they're not careful, Shea's going to be demanding a trade.
Exactly. And, so it's good that they're getting this, this talent and this young core together. But to me, I think there's a strong possibility that they at least flip the number 2 pick and maybe hold on to 12 and take somebody like, I don't know, like Mark Williams or Jalen Duren or, Benedict Mathurin if he drops that low. So I don't know. That would be something to look out for. But in my opinion, it's either going to be Jabari or Chet, depending on who goes where. I would love for them to take Banchero. I think it would be really not very smart for them to let him drop past then, but it just kind of depends where they want to go with it. I think they're pretty set in their backcourt. They want to see how Giddey and Shai are going to work together. So I don't think they'll take Jaden Ivey.
Sure.
But again, don't be surprised if they reach down a little bit and get Keegan Murray. I think he would fit pretty decently with them. But yeah, I think it's going to be either Jabari or Chet probably if they draft.
In prepping for this episode, I was kind of telling you a little bit about the teams that I think are going to dictate this draft. And I do think this draft is going to come down to 4 or 5 teams, and it starts with the Thunder at number 2. Sam Presti always does something, and it's something you least expect. Whether that's drafting a player, you're like, why this guy I don't understand his fit, or he turns and flips it for 7 picks later. So I do think there's a good possibility they do something with the number 2 pick as far as moving it around. I don't know if there's a superstar in the league that teams are willing to move for the 2nd overall pick. I guess you could throw Bradley Beal in there. If the Wizards really like Jaden Ivey or somebody like that. I didn't find too many trade partners for the number 2 pick as far as bringing a superstar over, but I could see them packaging the number 2 pick with a future pick to slide back down to like 6 or 7. So maybe someone like Portland packages something to move up. The Pelicans have a lot of draft capital. They could move up to number 2. Maybe it's even just the Kings and Thunder flipping from 4 and 2 because they don't want Ivy and Ivy doesn't want to be there. So they'll gladly trade up to number 2 to bring in someone to play alongside Sabonis. So there's a lot of potential for something to do there. It seems like the most likely scenario of everything we've seen is, Chet going to Jabari going 1, and then of course Paulo Banchero going to the Rockets. Fantastic fit. He would slide in right next to Jalen Green very well. You'd have 2 guys that can score the ball, very athletic, can pass, dictate the offense any way they need to. Pretty good fit there. After the Thunder, though, I think the draft really starts with the Kings at number 4. No one has any idea what they're doing. They claim they want guys who are bought into their program and want to be there, and then they trade Tyrese Halliburton, who wanted to be there. They've been talking about moving on from De'Aaron Fox for a while. Potentially, there hasn't been a trade out there that makes sense for both sides. What do you think they do at number 4? Do they keep the pick? Do they trade down? Do they package it with something else? To me, this is where the draft really starts because there's so many ways the draft could unfold depending on what the Kings do. So what would you do if you were in their shoes?
Well, they have a crowded backcourt, so I don't even know if Ivy makes a lot of sense for him, even though he plays very similarly to De'Aaron Fox. He's a better shooter, but he's definitely an explosive, guard and a good finisher like he is. So I don't really know. The Kings are just, I feel like they're so good at tanking, but so bad at drafting not only, I mean, they've drafted good players. I think Halliburton was a great player, and obviously Fox was a good pick, but they don't know how to proceed with that. I think they think that, they draft a lottery pick and they automatically become a playoff contender. And that's just not how it works. But I don't know. I mean, there's some guys they could trade down, maybe try to get an extra second or something like that. I could see them maybe taking, I don't know, maybe taking somebody that's more of a, versatile, 3 or 4 guard or something like that. It really, I don't really know what the best course of action for them is because, and unless somebody reaches up and takes Ivy and then you have either, Smith, Holmgren, or Banchero left, that would be, a good pick, especially after you moved on from Marvin Bagley. But they just, I don't know, they could package the 4th pick, and if they want to move Fox, maybe, I don't know, do a trade with the Nets and get Kyrie out of there. And that would be interesting to see. I don't know. They have options, but it's the Kings, so I don't really have a lot of faith that they're going to pick the right one.
They do have some interesting pieces. They do have Harrison Barnes that they could also float in a trade.
Right.
He's been kind of highly coveted as that stretch 3-4 guy that can do a lot of things. I don't think they do anything with the 2nd pick and De'Aaron Fox. I think that's, I don't know, like you got to get a lot back to give up De'Aaron Fox and the number 2 pick. I could see them sliding down to 4, 5, or 6, swapping with someone like the Pistons or the Pacers or the Blazers, even if there's a guy they really want to jump up for. But yeah, the Kings, they seem to be a franchise that's never going in the right direction. They have a lot of young talent and they create some buzz during the season. They get close to that 500 level, potentially playing, and then they just fall apart at the end. I've seen a lot of talk of talking to the Knicks about moving Fox over there. The only trade that really makes sense, though, is they got to take Julius Randle back, and I don't know if Randle fits with Sabonis. So I don't know what they do there, but I think the draft starts with the Kings, and that could change the whole dynamic of the draft, whether that's someone trading up to the 4 spot to get Jaden Ivey, or they just take Jaden Ivey because he's the best player available at that time, and they figure out the rest later. So that's one interesting to watch. I have also seen a lot of Keegan Murray there. I'm not quite as high on Keegan Murray as most everyone else is. And I don't know. I don't have a great answer for that. I think it's just, the level of competition. I thought the Big Ten was quite overrated. To me, I don't know what position he's going to play in the league. He's a little bit undersized physically for a 4 or 5 man. I don't know if he's quite quick enough to be a three-man. So definitely a good swing player. And I think he's going to be successful in the NBA. I just don't know if I want to throw out a top 2 or 3 pick banking on him being that guy.
Right.
Um, I think the Kings, another guy that would fit them very well is Ben Mathurin. Freakishly athletic shooter, scorer. He could come in, start right away, be an athletic wing to pair up with them. But the Kings, no one knows what they're doing. Um, they could do just about anything. So let's slide down just a little bit more. You got the Pistons at 4. I think the Pistons are in a prime position to have a very good draft, depending on what the Kings do. They would love to see Jaden Ivey slip to them at 4 and pair him with Cade Cunningham. There's a lot of options there. They could make some other pieces. They're looking to try and sign DeAndre Ayton, so that would be their big offseason acquisition. But if they could piece Cade Cunningham with DeAndre Ayton, they've talked about trading Jeremy Grant, so they could very likely get 2 lottery picks if they move Grant to the right team. The Trailblazers would love to have Jeremy Grant. I don't know if they're ready to give up the 7th pick for that, unless they just want to go all in. So the Pistons are in a prime spot to do a lot. And again, a lot of what they do, I think, really depends on the Kings. Pacers, another interesting team right behind them at 6. You get Tyrese Halliburton. You have Buddy Hield, Chris Duarte. You still have Miles Turner, TJ Warren coming off injury. What's their identity? Are they still rebuilding? Are they going for it? They too have been in a lot of conversations. Malcolm Brogdon's going to be off this team at some point this offseason. Someone's going to make a move for him. I don't know if trading Brogdon does enough in the top to do anything. I mean, maybe you talk, like if you want to move up, maybe you talk the Kings into some sort of swap there. I don't know if that makes sense. But the Pacers are another interesting team that, again, a lot of what they do dictates on who's still left there. But the team I want to talk about for a moment here is the Blazers. No McCollum anymore. Dame's still prime time Dame. I think we'll see how he comes off this injury. Anthony Simons in the backcourt with him could be a good pairing. They have Josh Hart, good wing player. What should they be doing here at 7? Is it drafting a guy with a high ceiling to come in and slide in, or is it best for them to package that pick with some of their other pieces to go out and get that superstar to pair with Lillard?
It's kind of tricky because Anthony Simons looked really, really good last year. So, I mean, do you want to keep developing him and turn him into a second option? I know that, they've had pieces that, they have guys like Nurkic that are serviceable, but, is that the best they can really do at the position? I think they've always just missed a long, versatile 3-man. That's kind of what I've always kind of thought was not their strong suit. So I don't know. I mean, I could see them going with AJ Griffin from Duke. Ben Mathurin, I think he usually plays the 2 guard, but he's, 6'7". And
he's got the size to play out there
of a 3 guy. Or if they want to take a look at the center options, they could maybe trade back a little bit and swap picks and maybe go for Jalen Duren or Mark Williams. They have a lot of options. They have a lot of, I don't want to say a lot of holes to fill, but they're definitely a team that right now is going to be a 35-40 win team, and they need to do something to get them over that. So I think, what they need, they have a lot of pieces that they could pair for a trade, but I don't really know who they want to go out and get. I don't know. They're kind of like the King. They're a better version of the Kings in terms of they're stuck in a spot, and they have a lot that they need to do in order to get over that. Except, in their case, the Kings are lottery, and I think the Portland's, just hovering around 10, 11 seed or something like that. So I don't know. I do think they have a little bit of freedom to trade down, and because there's really a lot of talented players you can get from 10 to 16 in this draft, which is, not usually the case. A lot of times this is not a very front loaded draft. I think it's more evenly spread out. And I think you get a lot of quality guys throughout. So if they do package it somewhere, I don't know, they'd have to get, they'd have to at least try to go out and get, maybe they can work out a trade with the Kings and get Barnes over to them. I think that's a pretty good fit with them. Mm-hmm. If they want to flip picks with that too, I don't know. They definitely have some options.
Yeah, I think if they want to move the pick, there's 2 guys that seem the most likely coming over. would be John Collins from the Hawks. The Hawks are looking to move on from him. He could be a good front court pairing with Nurkic to spread the floor and give Dame another option. It sounds like Jeremy Grant's at the top of their list for trade candidates. Would be great for them defensively. It
Very
would
good.
give them another Robert Covington with much better upside on the offensive end. I think that'd be huge there. One sleeper trade that we'll talk about later, but I think could be potentially there. They could take the number 7 pick, Josh Hart. They probably have to give up Simons for this, but send a package over to the Wizards for Bradley Beal and pair Beal with Dame. Don't think that's going to happen, but that'd be, a potential dream scenario.
I like that.
Next team, the Pelicans are another one that they have a lot of different directions they could go. Managed to get into the playoffs, made a huge trade last year to bring McCollum over from the Blazers. Very interesting pairing with him and Ingram. A lot of offense. Not the best defensive team right away, but a lot of offense. Of course, Zion will come back at some point. Who knows when? He should be playing right away.
Yeah.
Valanciunas at the 5. They really need a strong, dominant distributor at point guard. They played McCollum a lot at the lead point guard the second half of the season. Last year they made the trade for Devontae Graham, and that seemed to be a bad trade. I love Devontae Graham, but coming over to the Pelicans just was not the right fit for him, apparently. So they could be looking to get a guard. They could also just add more freakishly athletic depth at the wing position. Go get a guy like AJ Griffin that can shoot. Take a guy like Ben Mathurin if he slides down. There's a lot of options they could do. Again, they could also package some stuff. I think this will be a draft day trade. I think Devontae Graham does get traded again, and is packaged with some other picks there for them to slide up or slide down.
I agree.
Spurs, not going to talk too much on them. They have a lot of young talent. They need to figure out what they're going to do. Do they want to compete? Do they want to build? Most everyone has them taking a center, whether it's Duran or Mark Williams. And then we get to the Wizards at 10. Right now, Beal has not said if he's staying or going. He's only said wherever he thinks he can win is where he's going to go. No one knows what that means.
Probably means leaving.
If he stays, they have the 10th pick. They desperately need someone to come in alongside to play with him and Porzingis and the rest of that roster. They have some decent pieces there. This is one that I think they would love to find a way to trade up to secure someone like Jaden Ivey to play alongside them. But they could go a ton of directions here. Is there anyone that stands out to you specifically that would be a good pairing with Beal? So we're going to keep the assumption that Beal is on the roster and he's staying.
I would like Johnny Davis out of Wisconsin. Good combo guard, really good scorer, can distribute, can handle. They can kind of go back to that style of Wall with Beal. With him, there's a couple guys that, like you said, they could trade up to get, whether that's, Dyson Daniels out of the G League, or if they do go all the way up and get Ivy, that would be a good idea. The thing with Ivy is he's not really a pure point, and I don't know if I'd want to have two, natural shooting guards in the backcourt. So I really do like Johnny Davis for them. So we'll see. I don't know. They're another one of those teams that's kind of stuck in the middle of the rut. But if Brad stays, they definitely need, I think, somebody to pair in the backcourt. If they want to reach back a little bit, they could look at Ty Washington, who is kind of a pure point.
Yep.
That's kind of a stretch, though, because I think right now he's projected to go anywhere from,
he's got a wide range.
20. Yeah, there's a lot of different ones that he's kind of looking at. So I'm just not really sure. There's really not a lot of pure points in this draft. I think the only other one that's getting semi-lottery talk is Kennedy Chandler from Tennessee, but I don't know. I think that's stretching a little bit, but by far to me, the best decision would be to Johnny Davis for them.
Yeah, I think Davis would be good. Dyson Daniels would be good. Honestly, Ochai would be a good spot there too, to be a plug-in shooter right there on the wing. Again, they have a lot of directions they could go, but it really all depends on what are they going to do with Bradley Beal. If he's in, they got to add somebody now. If he's out, they need to move him and get the best thing they can in return. Next up, that brings us to the Knicks. The Knicks never draft anybody that the team loves outside of RJ Barrett, really. Another one of those teams that's kind of stuck in a spot. They've got a ton of guys that are talented, but they have no idea where they're going in as far as direction. So they're one that's interesting. They could package Julius Randle and move up. They could swap out of there. I don't know what they're going to do, but whatever they do, the fans are not going to like it. So let's just skip over them. Next, let's go real quick. The Thunder have a second pick here. I think if they manage to keep this pick, they're going to try and use it to trade back up. I think they're really big on Shaedon Sharpe just because he's a freakish athlete, long, athletic, has a huge potential upside. So they could do something there. The Hornets, though, they've got 2 picks here at 13 and 15 with the Cavs sandwiched between them. Big need they have is a big man. So clearly this says Mark Williams or Jalen Duren, whoever's there, you take them. But they have a lot of decisions to make too. They've got a lot of guys with expensive contracts, and they need to figure out if they're going to pay Miles Bridges. So they have the potential to move on from Gordon Hayward. His contract's going to be tough to trade, but he's a trade candidate. Kelly Oubre could get moved again. They have Montrezl Harrell, but they need a big. So I think they're going to go big there, and then whatever best position players left at 15 they'll take, unless they do some sort of package and move on. The Cavs, I think, are an interesting one to break down real quick because this is, to me, the prime landing spot for Ochai in the early part of the draft. They, again, a lot of talent, very young team, not a huge veteran presence outside of Kevin Love. Not really too many glaring holes. They need a consistent 2 or 3 guy that can shoot. That could be Colin Sexton when he comes back, or they could use and move Sexton. What do you think the Cavs should do at 14?
I think they should take Ochai, actually. I think that would be a good move for them. I know they're looking at Jeremy Sochan out of Baylor, and there's a couple other guys that could go a little bit in that area, but I think Ochai fills that hole really well. And I mean, get a long, athletic 3-and-D guy that you can plug in. He can start if you want him to. He can have some depth coming off the bench. I think that's honestly the best move for them. Unbiased,
yeah,
of course.
Let's just go straight there. Then we're gonna wrap this up here in a few minutes, but let's just go straight to the 2 Kansas guys. Ochai, I think, is incredibly. He's just not talked about enough. I think everyone freaks out. Oh, he's a senior. He's 22. He's like 6 months older than Johnny Davis. He's like 6 months older than Keegan Murray. He's really not that much. He just happened to be a senior where most of these guys were freshmen or sophomores. But to me, next to Paulo Banchero, Och is the most NBA ready for what this league looks for. Every team, no matter how good you are, needs a strong 3-and-D guy that you can plug in right away, can hold his own offensively, get his shot off when he needs to, but can be a knockdown shooter, spot-up shooter, but can also be strong in the transition game and get out there and defend. I think Ochai is that guy. I think a lot of teams are sleeping on him, and whoever takes him is going to be have one of the biggest steals in the draft. So this is a prime spot for him with the Cavs. But I just want to look at a couple other teams that you think would be good fits for him. To me, his range as far as draft position is quite large. I think he could go as high as 7 or 8 if a team really loves him, but he could also drop if teams are making a lot of moves. So out of the teams that you see in that mid first round, who do you think is his? I know we just touched on Cleveland, but is there another team you think would be his best spot?
Yeah, I think right now it's probably either going to be Charlotte at 15 or Atlanta at 16. And I actually do like the fits on both of those. And I'd love to see him on Charlotte with Kelly too. But both of those teams could use some shooting, especially Atlanta. I think getting that combo guard, he can I think he can be a better version of Kevin Huerter right now, the way he is. I think he's got a better NBA body. Yeah. And he can provide some depth for that team. So, and also, I mean, when you have like a dominant shooter like Atlanta has with Trey or Golden State has with Steph, a lot of times if you have that one guy that's just a super deep threat, it seems like it helps spacing, but also, I mean, especially if it's a point guard when they're bringing it down, they're going to load up the front of the key. And they're going to trap him off every screen, and getting another knockdown shooter like, Golden State does with Clay, that opens that up. They're not going to double every single time off the screen because they don't want to leave that other sharpshooter open. So I think he works really well with Atlanta. I'd like to see him go to a playoff contention team, which, I mean, Charlotte and Atlanta probably are good guesses to make the playoffs next year. So I think he definitely has a wide range. I could see him going as high as, I don't know. I could see, he makes sense for the Spurs. Popovich likes experienced NBA ready players, and they're in need of a shooting guard, I think. I could even see him going to the Pelicans. It'd have to be, again, it'd have to be a scouting team that really, really likes him. But I think he's either going 15 or 16.
Yeah, pretty much anywhere he goes, he's going to be a great addition. Portland would be a great fit for him too. I don't know if he goes as high as 7. I would still take him that high, but they could take him. Like I said, the Pelicans, Washington would be a good fit. I think if he slides down a little bit, Chicago or Minnesota would be a good spot too. Really, there's not a team that he could get onto that's not going to be a good fit. He's not going to slide all the way down to Philadelphia at 23, but another great spot there. So Oach is going to have a successful career wherever he ends up, unless it's just a really crappy team.
Unless it's the Kings.
Yeah, which hopefully another key player does not go there. So let's jump to the next guy, Christian Braun. He's another one that his range has shifted a lot. He's been as high as 20. Now he's mostly second round. He's similar to Oach as far as he could be plug-in shooter, 3-and-D guy, very aggressive, assertive on the ball. I think he's going to be a pest in the league. He's going to get better defensively and just wear you down. To me, I just have a really easy time picturing him in a Warriors jersey. I'm not a huge Warriors fan, but just something about the way their team is ran, he could slide in perfectly with that team off the bench. They wouldn't need him to be tremendous overnight, but he could slide in, get minutes, be a spot up shooter. That's my pick for best spot. I also think the Sixers could really use him. Miami could take him if they want to move off of Duncan Robinson and bring in another similar guy that's not expensive. Where do you see him going, and what do you think his best spot is?
I've seen him early second round to like Toronto, or I think Magic have 31 or 32.
Yeah, Magic are big on him.
Sliding in pretty well there. I think he would fit very well with the Grizzlies at 29. I think get another shooter off the bench and a good defensive guy. He's definitely got the personality to play with that Memphis team, which I really like, with his, trash talking, obscenities, all that stuff. So I think he fits really well with their culture. He definitely has a wide range, so I would love to see him go in the first round. Even the Thunder at 30, picking a versatile, 3-and-D guy, that, is a little, I think he's pretty NBA ready. I mean, I know there's some questions on his, intangibles, like his, physical characteristics, but I think he's pretty NBA ready. So that would be a safe pick for the Thunder, who a lot of times draft just raw talent. And I do see the Miami pick. I think he could go as high as 27 with Miami. I think he fits really, really well with them.
I think he's going to be a fun one that's really going to stand out during summer league, and a lot of teams are going to wish they didn't pass up on him.
I agree.
So let's finish this up with some draft day trades. Any big names that you foresee getting moved, or who do you think is the most likely to get moved? There's a bunch of names out there. I'm not going to read all of them, but anything you're feeling right now of guys that are likely to be moved, or guys you want to see moved?
I think Beal gets moved for sure. And I think probably Collins or Brogdon, one of those two. Also OG Anunoby, who's, doesn't get talked about a ton. I think we could see him get moved as well.
Yeah, OG's at the top of my list with John Collins. It would be crazy if Kyrie or Beal got traded. I'm on the side of that. If it happens, it's going to be during free agency period.
Yeah.
Miles Turner, Malcolm Brogdon seem to be the two that are going to be talked about a lot. And of course, Jeremy Grant. But a lot of exciting things. I think this is going to be a draft with the most movement as far as trades. I think anything we predict is going to be impossible to know because teams are going to move all over. So that's kind of where we stand. Good luck to Oach and Christian when they're in the draft. Hope they end up in great spots. Draft is coming up in just a couple of days. So by the time we should hopefully have this up by Wednesday, so a day before the draft. So please take a listen to it. We're not the experts. We're just giving you our opinions on what we think is going to shake out for the draft. But thanks for joining us today. That's going to be a place we wrap up. Stay tuned. We'll jump back on here after the draft, probably next week, and kind of recap what's going on there, and then jump into free agency. So with that, guys, thanks for joining us. This was another episode of the Sports Authority Gurus podcast. For future episodes, you can find us on Spotify, Podbean.com, the iHeartRadio app, and on YouTube. Wherever you do listen to us from, please hit the subscribe button, give us a great review, and most importantly, share with your friends.